What's wrong with pro wrestling? How to fix it, part 3. Sorry it took so long to get this far, but I've been having some technical difficulties. But by now, I hope you had viewed, sorry for the typo, it's supposed to be viewed, parts 1 and 2. If not, click the links below where I put them. And now for this part, I will focus on 2 aspects of this notional league that will change the image of wrestling. First will be the league structure, and how league will be formed. It's going to be different. And then the second is going to be the wrestler standards.
I'm saying to really treat it like a sport, like you would. I don't know. I think the guy makes a great point here.
No, I mean it's a great question, but I think it means treating professional wrestling like a sport can mean such a wide array of things. Focusing on winning and losing. AEW is doing that to a degree. TNA did that once a year with the Bound for Glory series. WrestleMania does that to a certain degree. Where you put the emphasis on the real competition. But you can only do that for so long. Professional wrestling works because it's a story, character-driven property. It has been since the beginning of television time, folks. Just what you're watching now isn't the way wrestling used to be. Wrestling used to be wins and losses, but they were strong characters and stories. And to take the character story element out of it, which is the television element, by the way, and present it as a true sport, I just don't think that's possible.
The storytelling theory, given that, how do you theoretically keep a balance between displaying wrestling as a sport and having grudge matches without it seeming like the wrestlers just do whatever they please always?
I'm not sure I really understand the question.
Well, the idea being if it's a real sport, then there is a governing body, right? Who says, like the NFL makes a schedule. Okay, the Eagles are playing the Cowboys. But then sometimes the guys go out there and they just say, "Me and you, we're going to fight right now." And ding,
Okay.
ding, ding. So how do we? What's the balancing act?
There has, again, my opinion, folks. All right, just an opinion. But I think one of the things that is lacking across the boards, not in any one organization, in all of the organizations, is a coherent, consistent framework of rules and processes. How does someone earn a title shot, for example, is one. How is it that wrestlers can make matches? I mean, that's like Tom Brady deciding, what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football schedule is going to be next year. How is it that these spontaneous, I'll see you in the ring right now matches happen? Who gives a wrestler authority to book matches? It's nonsensical. Now I understand it's easy and it's spontaneous and it allows producers to facilitate action in a seemingly unplanned or spontaneous way, and I get that part of it. But every time you do that as a producer, you're diluting any framework or basic understanding from the fans of how things work in professional wrestling. And why does that fucking matter anyway? Who cares, right? Doesn't matter. It's all about the athleticism. No, it's not. It's about the storytelling. And you can't have a story or a long-term storyline, at least, or any kind of a storyline, without some structure. If a rule has been broken, therefore a fine has to be levied, that rule and the fact that it was broken needs to be established in some kind of consistent, understandable framework for the audience. And the same goes for how matches are made. And the same goes for a grudge match. If you're going to throw the rules out, I'm all for that. If some matches, some stories, require or deserve to end up in a no holds barred cage match, one man, last man standing, whatever it is, And the story has escalated, and all of the events within that story have created the need to finally have this one big blow off. I'm all for it, but acknowledge that. Don't just let it happen. Don't let the acknowledge, okay, well, this match is no holds barred match. Well, fucking why? And who said so? And how did that occur? Give me some backstory. Give me something to believe in. Look, I have been in the professional wrestling industry for over 30 years. I still want you to make me believe, or at least try, but without any framework, without any rules that are established and consistent, by the way, because it doesn't do any good to have a rule one week and just throw it out and don't even acknowledge why the next week. If you're not going to give me a framework, to help me understand the story. And here's the other thing. I'm going to go off on a tangent on this one. When you establish those rules, now it's a pain in the ass because you have to be consistent, and that requires producers and writers and talent to work within, certain guidelines or work within that framework. And sometimes people don't like to do that. They just want to go out and do whatever they want to do, which is what the question kind of alluded to. So it's a discipline that you have to have. And I think it's a discipline in the long term that really serves, the storytelling box, well. But when you finally do that and you establish these rules and you adhere to them, you now, instead of becoming kind of a pain in the ass because you have to work within this framework, you've now created storytelling opportunities. Now it actually means something when somebody violates a rule, or a promoter, if better to say promoter, in this case, AEW or WWE or anybody else, decides, okay, these are the rules, but tonight and tonight only, we're going to throw those rules out the window. Now I'm interested, because now it seems like, whoa, this is out of the ordinary. This is something special. Holy shit, this is going to be different. But when you don't have any rules, or you don't emphasize those rules, or there's no framework, that the audience can understand. I mean, a wrestling fan should be able to get in an elevator. I'm going to use this analogy a little bit, throughout the show probably. But if you're a wrestling fan and you get into an elevator and you go into the top floor of a 5-story building, and somebody gets in that elevator with you, and before the doors close, they say, hey, you're wearing a wrestling shirt. Are you a wrestling fan? Yes, I am. What are the rules like in wrestling? Now, you should be able, before you get to the 5th floor and the door opens up, to give them a basic explanation of how wrestling works, just like you would football or baseball. But if you can't do that because your rules are either non-existent or so unestablished and inconsistent, you basically have to admit there are no rules in wrestling. It happens to be whatever that match wants it to be at any particular night. And I just don't think that serves the industry well. Wow.
Eric talks on what gives wrestlers the right to make their own matches, as if it should not happen unless it's in the context of telling a stupid story. Stupid as far as I'm concerned. They don't need storytelling anymore. But you should know that it happens all the time when wrestlers start making their own matches and stuff like that. In pro wrestling, there is no consistency when it comes to rules. As the saying used to go in the 80s, everything can happen in the WWF. Meaning that rules are basically just guidelines, or I guess whatever. So it's not a big issue. And how in the world are you going to explain this to anybody? As if when Eric said, if you had to explain it to somebody, how in the world would you do it? There's no consistent rules at all. Real wrestling has actual rules. So that's why I want the tag team wrestling league to be all about having a structure of a sports league. So that means the league will be like any other league, which will have an on season and an off season. This will not be like a TV series where you have to tell a story that keeps going and going, and then it ends and you do another story. I'm throwing that part out. No more storytelling. It has to be just matches, wins and losses, and that's what the meaning is. So there must be an off season, to give everyone a rest, time to rest, to heal their bodies and stuff like that. It's not going to be any crazy stunts. It's going to be just real wrestling. Maybe it should be real. I'm starting to think towards that. So my guess, for actual league to start, I would say probably in the winter time, January, going to 8 months in August, taking the rest off. That would include the playoffs though. So you have September, October, November, December, and then all that will be off time, and then starts back up again in January. So that's what I'm thinking right now. So now you're thinking, how could it be a national league but have a territory system? Well, that's very simple. The answer is franchising. I think this is the fastest way to bring in money rather than have one single owner that has to bring all the finance and you bring in other people. So you have a territory system, which is a franchise. Franchise gives you territories. So we're going back to the old territory system. Plus, we're going to tie all the territories into one league. You know, what the NWA should have done, but they didn't. They should have sold franchises. You had one league, and then you everyone that bought the franchise, controls that franchise. No one can come in. So you have a team, one team in the city. Now, I have included city names. Well, I'm doing that right now, but it might not be necessary. They might just want the team names, depending on how they do the matches and the venues. But for now, I'll just do cities like they used to have. So you might be thinking, if it's still going to be a work, so how's it going to work? At the time I was doing this, it might not be a work. I might just go straight to just the real one and add in the tag team, as something special, to bring people in and think, oh, what is this now? So keep it as real sports. Maybe I'm leaning towards that way. It's no problem doing that. So I believe that the owners, if you see in other leagues, baseball and football, you have small markets, you have large markets. So I guess all the revenue, team merchandise and whatnot, what they sell, their ticket sales, they get that, but also is going to be a sharing of the national revenue. So so you're not going to pay the same talent. It's all the talent you have. The best talent's going to get the best pay. And the same thing they do in pro wrestling and other speeds and other teams, sports. It's going to be like that too. So, but there's going to be local revenue. It's also going to be team revenue, to share. So let's calculate how many matches a season there should be. Well, it depends on scheduling and availability of venues. Starting out, I would say the proper size would be 5,000 to 10,000 seats. Arenas that around that size. This is a new league with new challenges. So I would have something set up like a exhibition matches, just for testing, to see how many meets per week, to get the audience reaction, and see if they like this. And if it turns out to be weak and no one's interested, then it'd probably be just a wash. But one thing, if we do get a schedule, if the response is good, and people want an alternative to pro wrestling, WWF, whatever, WWE, excuse me. I don't know if they're trying to sell, you have AEW. This might be competition, it might not be, but we're not going to have, everyday schedules. But what I do plan on having is tapping on the weekends. As the pro wrestling has really abandoned the weekend schedules. I don't know why, but they don't. So a lot of pro sports take us on weekends, so I'll take advantage of that. Maybe twice a week, 2 matches a week, in a weekend spot. So I would say that would make 12 matches per month, and if you did it 6 months, that would be 72 matches for a regular season. So you can keep tabs of wins and losses out of 72. That would be a regular season. Then you have the playoff matches where you have, I would say, a 3 out of 5, best out of 3 out of 5. Not going to 7 matches like the NBA does. So that would last until we get to the last team. And so you have travel expenses too. I'm going to cut that down because I believe the team should travel as a team all together. Not just jumping in a rental car and driving there. Gonna be there by this time. And to me, that's not really professional. To me, it's not professional enough to me. I think since you're doing a team, they should all travel together. And so that concludes that part of the league structure. So now I want to get to the wrestler standards. So obviously in wrestling, we got to have weight classes. I'm not sure about the increments. Maybe start at 170 and go 10 pounds or 15 pounds. But not everyone's going to be 280 pounds, because I know the audience is used to that because of what the WWF has done. They have done going for the big man, football-sized guys. But there are wrestlers who are small, so I want to make this able to have small guys, medium-sized guys, and heavyweight guys. I think we need all three just for the variety. So, and then remember, this is still all notional, so it's based on who's available. And there will be many wrestlers that come from different sports. They're able to learn this type of wrestling. You have to go to school to learn this and stuff like that. It's not going to be like whatever they learned before in their when they went to wrestling school. That's out the door right now. So there's lots of MMA fighters that they only fight like once or twice a year. So those are the guys that are going to be grabbing those kind of people. So they have experience. You have college people. You have people that are post-college. They still have wrestling clubs and whatnot. That's what I'm leaning towards. Maybe I should just abandon totally, instead of being a transitional league from what you see now to what I call a pseudo sport, straight into to the real thing. But I want to make it interesting and exciting for the teams to look and appear like to the audience. So that's going to depend on how it's going to be set up, the exhibition schedule, and I'm going to have another idea. And this may be seen controversial, but it may not be controversial. But I could include women wrestlers too. So we can have in between, we can split the men's matches, have a men's match, and then have the women's matches in between. And then after that, finish up with the men's matches. I do that for the purpose of time. So two teams can meet. Instead of having one place, one venue, and having 10 different teams show up. You can have one event where you can travel and have one team versus another team. So you have a 2-hour show. That will stretch it out, because you have. You have 10 guys and like 6 women on each team. I think there'll be 16 on each team. So obviously it's not going to be any male versus female. So with that, that's probably going to conclude. If I have any other things to say, I know it took a long time to have this, but I'm sure I want to put it out there and see what any thoughts are. So if you'd like to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. I appreciate that.